Hi everyone, my name is Nessa and I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. Today I will briefly take you through your conscious and unconscious mind and everything in between, as well as their functions in our daily lives. Since most of what we do and how we react and behave has to do with our mind, it's good to at least have a clear understanding of what drives these behaviors. So the way our mind learns is through our senses, and the way it does that is through identification, association, and response. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're out somewhere and someone passes by who's wearing a perfume that's very familiar to you. Your sense of smell starts associating with that smell. And all of a sudden, you start to get an image of the person who used to always wear that perfume. Let's say it was your aunt. You start identifying that smell to your aunt, and memories and images of her start popping up in your head. And the response would be the same emotions get triggered that you felt whenever she was around and smelled that way. Now, this applies to all of our senses and the memories and the feelings that are attached to them, good or bad. So, when we were very young, as we said, we start associating with the world around us and start having experiences, some positive, some negative, and some neutral. This is how we shape our beliefs and how we learn how to identify and interact in life. Different people in the same world, given the same stimuli, can act differently just based on their learnings and experiences. Simple example. I grew up having pets, a dog and a cat. I formed a positive relationship and had good memories with my dog. In other words, I built a positive known when it comes to being around dogs. On the other hand, I have a friend who's fearful of dogs. Her first interaction with one was in her teenage years when she was chased down by a stray dog. As a result, until today, when she sees a dog from like a mile away, she changes direction and goes the other way, no matter how small the dog is. This is an example of a direct experience that has left a negative known. Her son, on the other hand, didn't have any negative personal interactions with a dog, but as a result of watching his mother be so fearful and panicking, he has built the same fear response through modeling his authority figure / caregiver, and has built the same negative known that way. This applies to other emotions and behaviors too. Our kids mimic our model of the world, just like we did with our parents. We don't necessarily always remember the exact event that led to a behavior that we're struggling with today. We just see the symptom and label it as the issue. But in order to be able to find the root cause, we need to go down into the unconscious where everything is stored. Hypnosis is a great tool to tap into the unconscious in order to find the source and correct it if necessary. Now, let's start with the conscious mind. Our conscious mind is where we have our logic, reason, willpower, and decision making. When we say you're consciously aware, it means you're thinking consciously. If you're sitting down, you're aware of where you are, who's sitting next to you, what the temperature of the room feels like. When you make a decision or set a goal, you're consciously doing all that. Let me give you another example. Let's think of your mind as a mansion with everything inside of it, and it's in total darkness. You have a flashlight in your hand, and it can light up between 7 to 9 things in the mansion at a time. For example, it will light up the bookshelf, the carpet, the couch. You get the idea. Now that changes from moment to moment as you move around and point the flashlight in other areas of the house. You start illuminating other objects. It's the same thing with your conscious mind. You're processing a scratch pad of information that's electrical in nature. And at any given moment, there can only be 7 to 9 things in your awareness. That's your conscious mind. Now, let's get into the unconscious mind, the dark side of the mansion, where everything else lays. This is where we keep what we call our knowns, positive and negative, and some neutral. Everything we've learned from the beginning of our existence to present, every experience we had, good or bad, every memory with the emotion that it was associated with, is stored and has left a known in our unconscious. Now, aside from the millions of programs that it runs for our physical body, for example, our breathing, our heartbeat, digestion, all the way to cellular division and function, these are all happening unconsciously. You don't sit there and say, I like for my heart to beat now, or my blood cell count needs adjusting. These are unconscious programming that runs itself. This is about more than 88% of our mind, which is quite a large percentage. But it has 2 main jobs that it does best. Number 1 is to protect us, and number 2 is to make us happy. And it does that based on what it has learned. And if it has learned the wrong way, that's when it can work against us. I'll give you a real example from a real woman who was in a relationship with a man who she claimed was perfect in every way. Treated her nice, was very attentive to her needs, and basically everything she wanted. But she kept sabotaging the relationship by picking stupid fights and arguing for no reason. And she couldn't understand why. After working with her, she came to a realization that her ex-husband would always say this to her when they would argue. That she doesn't know what a good man is, and she's not deserving of having a good relationship, and is not worthy of love. Now, she knew consciously that she wanted better and deserved better, but unconsciously, he had made her believe that maybe she was the problem, that maybe she really didn't deserve to have love. It had become a known to her. Now, between her logic, that covers about 12% of her mind, and the unconscious, the other 88%, which one do you think would win every time? I will have a video expanding on this subject of why we struggle to change a habit or behavior that we know is wrong and destructive, but fail to do so. And it will really help you understand where the root of the problems you may be facing is coming from, and how you can change all that just by having a better understanding of your mind. Now let's get back. So we talked about what the conscious mind is and what the unconscious mind is. But between the two, we have what we call the critical faculty, or the critical mind. We also refer to it as the gatekeeper. You can think of it as a filter between the conscious and the unconscious. We're not born with the critical mind. It's something that develops in early childhood, at about 7 to 9 years of age. This is when we start to differentiate what is real and come to a basic understanding of what the world around us is. Before the critical mind is developed, you take in everything the way it is and believe everything you're told. If I told a 3-year-old who hasn't developed a critical mind yet that there is a purple dragon at the door holding a bucket of candy for him, he will run to the door in excitement in search of the purple dragon and find a disappointing outcome. But if I were to tell the same story to a 9-year-old, he's more likely to look at me like I was crazy. That's because his critical mind has already been developed based on his learning and modeling his caregivers in his life and his experiences. Now, the critical mind is also there to protect us. If I told you to jump over a bridge, your critical mind would interfere, and based on your model of the world that you have learned, will stop you from doing so. If you think about the millions of bits of information that comes through our conscious mind on a daily basis, if the critical mind wasn't there to filter all that, and decide what's important and what needs to be discarded and what needs to be kept or sent down to the unconscious, we would be taking in everything and not be able to identify the differences. In other words, we would be that 3-year-old child in a more dangerous setting with nothing to protect us and constantly overwhelmed. There's another part of our mind that we're born with, the part that's already been wired in, called the primitive area. And there we have the senses that's already wired in, called the fight-flight response. This programming is there for our safety, and it's been with us since the beginning of time. In the Stone Age, when cavemen were around, the fight-flight response would be, if you see or sense danger, such as a wild animal, given you have the proper weapon, you would stay and fight, maybe take dinner home. And if not, you would flight or run away so you don't become dinner. This is an automatic response that we don't control consciously. It actually shuts down the thinking part of our brain when activated because it needs to respond immediately to the danger it senses and has no time to strategize and plan. I'm sure you've heard or experienced this when you're overwhelmed or any emotion that it's at peak. It becomes hard to think logically, or as we sometimes say, we can't think rationally, and we make quick judgments. So as we evolved throughout centuries and life became more complicated, our survival mechanism, our fight-flight response, also evolved and changed to cope with our lifestyle. It's no longer just black and white. It now has many shades of gray in between. Those shades of gray represent our daily challenges. It's great when this response kicks in when we're being chased down by the neighbor's pit bull or when there's an argument that's escalating and we walk away from it, maybe before it gets physical. But unfortunately, for many people, this response gets activated at the wrong time. For example, when you need to get on stage and give a speech, or in a social setting, meeting new people. Since we're feeling the threat and fear, but there's technically no one to fight, we turn the fight inwards. And it turns to what we call anxiety. And in other situations where we can't face the problem on hand, for example, a bad relationship, and you can't find a way out, we escape inwards into what we call depression. Because what is depression? It's a form of escape mechanism. Problem is, a lot of people are stuck in this state. They're either constantly running or constantly fighting and can't seem to break free. This pressure begins to shatter the mind, and it's exactly at that point where it can turn into a long-term problem, even a chronic health issue. This is where hypnotherapy can be life-changing, because it's capable of changing, shifting states. What is anxiety? It's not a mental disease. It's a state of constant anxiousness. What is depression? It's a state of constant sadness, numbness, emptiness. Hypnotherapy can help tap into that state and shift that emotion associated to whatever it is that's making you anxious, or shift the state of whatever it is that's making you depressed. Because feeling broken is a normal response to the overwhelming emotions you're going through. But it's how you pick yourself back up that's key. I always tell my clients to look at hypnosis like kintsugi art, which is a pottery technique. When something breaks, like a vase or a bowl, they glue it back together with melted gold. Instead of making the cracks invisible, they make them beautiful to celebrate the history of the art. And as an expert, I know how to mend those broken pieces and turn them into treasure in order for you to become your own unique piece of art. All it takes is an actual, real desire for change. I hope by watching this video you learned a bit more about how your mind works and how your thoughts get created and the different ways it can affect you. For more information on how hypnotherapy can help you and for tips and how to improve and have better control of your mind, subscribe to my channel. You can also contact me through my website and my email that's down below. I want to end this video with a poem from the great Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Thank you for watching.